We are on fire. Estamos en fuego on this episode of Implicit Bias. And to be sensitive to the innocent people in California, I'm sure there's a few out there. Now, I don't know them. I can't name them, but I'm sure there's one or two out there. We do actually wish you the best, and we're really sorry for your loss. We'll get to the incendiary opening of this week's show in just a minute. But first, this is Implicit Bias for the week of Saturday, January 18th, 2025. I'm your host, Kavan Bordelon, so let's get to it. Now, we'd like to begin by saying that what's happening in California is terrible on just so many levels. We're hearing about people who have succumbed to the fires, people who, well, have lost their lives, and that is a terrible, horrific tragedy. We're seeing what can only be described potentially by, nightmarish winds? Whipping fire around homes, businesses, cars. Can I start that over? I just hate that damn pause. Because I knew it was bad when Tug looked at me like, is he all right?
Yeah, I was like, wait, I didn't mean for you to stop.
No, and you were, and I didn't know what you were tweaking over there, so.
Wait, you accused him of tweaking?
No. I'm glad he was tweaking, not twerking.
Yes.
Two totally different things.
I would love to see him twerk.
Imp of the perverse, right? That car wreck that you just can't not look at.
Yeah.
Shall we try this again, gentlemen?
Yep. 3, 2.
We are on fire. Estamos en fuegos on this week's episode of Implicit Bias. And to be sensitive to the innocent people in California, I'm sure there's a few of you out there. I don't know them. I can't name them. But I'm sure there's a few. We do wish you the best. And we're really sorry for your loss. We'll actually get to that incendiary opening of this week's show in just a minute. But first, this is Implicit Bias for the week of Saturday, January 18th, 2025. I'm your host, Kavan Bordelon, so let's get to it. Now, we'd like to begin by saying that what's happening in California is just terrible on so many levels. We're hearing about people who've succumbed to the fires, people who've, lost their lives, and that is a terrible, horrific tragedy. Period. End of sentence. What we're seeing, though, can really only be described by saying nightmarish winds that are whipping fire around homes, businesses, cars, people, and pretty much everything else out there. We're hearing that these people had been essentially abandoned by the so-called leaders put in place to protect them from basically this exact scenario. It's really just another notch in the belt for 2025. I guess we started with, really suspicious alleged lone actors murdering people on one of the most famous party streets in the world. We then graduated to nonsensical bombings in what the world known as Sin City. And now we're seeing what can only be described as really a baptism of fire in a town that many said needs to burn. Now, I don't know that anyone actually meant Hollywood needs to burn. Literally. But figuratively, everyone kind of knew that Hollywood needed to be fixed, just like Washington, D.C., as a matter of fact. When mentioning Tinseltown to an IT expert, he actually told me, have you tried unplugging it and plugging it back in? The reality is Hollywood, Los Angeles, did not need to burn literally, but it needed to be cleaned, or maybe it just needed to be baptized figuratively. See, it's a recurring theme that comes up when you study history, specifically the Bible, that God finds a way to baptize all of us individually as well as collectively. Here's where the problem comes in. See, it's documented multiple times in the good book that John the Baptist actually said he baptized with water, but one was coming who would baptize with fire. I know, it's problematic right now. We don't want to think about anything baptizing with fire at this time, but it's important that we understand why. Why baptism by fire? See, water just cleans. Water washes off the dirt. Water makes the surface grime go away, and if something is soluble, all water does is dilute the pollutants. But fire does way more. Sure, you can actually clean with fire, but fire purifies. and fire renews. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, just take a look at what happens when a forest catches fire and no one's around. We're actually going to use AI here. I know it's a first on the show, but it's actually spot on in this case. A quick search on the Google Moogly gives us a good explanation. Dear Lord. Guys, I'm sorry. We got to do this one more time. I saw Googly Moogly pop up there and I went. It's been a long week, guys. Sorry.
3, 2.
Whoa. I gotta get the prompter back. Yeah, we're.
How do you spell that? That's a great question. Yeah.
All right, let's try this again.
3, 2.
We are on fire. Estamos en fuegos on this episode of Implicit Bias. And to be sensitive to the innocent people in California, I'm sure there's a few of them out there. I don't know them. I can't name them, but I'm sure you're there. We do actually wish you the best. And we're genuinely sorry for your loss, which means that we'll have to get to the incendiary opening of this week's show in just a minute. But first, this is Implicit Bias for the week of Saturday, January 18th, 2025. I'm your host, Kavan Bordelon, so let's get to it. Now, we'd like to begin by saying that what's happening in California is terrible on so many levels. We're hearing about people who've succumbed to the fires, people who've actually lost their lives, and that is a terrible, horrific tragedy. Period. End of sentence. But what we're seeing can really only be described by nightmarish winds whipping fire around homes, businesses, cars, people, and pretty much everything else out there. We're hearing that these people had essentially been abandoned by the so-called leaders put in place to protect them from this exact scenario. It's really basically just another notch in the belt for 2025. I mean, if you think about it, we started with really suspicious alleged lone actors murdering people on one of the most famous party streets in the world. We then graduated to nonsensical bombings in what the world knows as Sin City. And now we're seeing what can only be described as a baptism of fire in a town that many said needs to burn. Now, I don't know that anyone actually meant Hollywood needs to burn literally. But figuratively, everybody kind of knew that Hollywood needed to be fixed, just like Washington, D.C. As a matter of fact, when mentioning Tinseltown to an IT buddy of mine, he actually looked at me and said, "Have you tried unplugging it and plugging it back in?" The reality is Hollywood, Los Angeles, didn't need to burn literally, but it needed to be cleaned, or maybe it just needed to be baptized figuratively. See, it's a recurring theme that comes up when you study history, specifically the Bible, that God finds a way to baptize all of us individually as well as collectively. Here's kind of where the problem comes in. See, it's documented multiple times in the good book that John the Baptist actually said he baptized with water, but one was coming who would baptize with fire. I know it's problematic right now. We don't want to think about anything baptizing with fire at this time, but it's important that we understand why. Why baptism by fire? See, water just cleans. Water washes off the dirt. Water makes the surface grime go away, and if something is soluble, well, all water does is dilute the pollutants. But fire does way more. Sure, you can actually clean with fire, but fire purifies. Fire renews. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, just take a look at what happens when a forest catches fire and nobody's around. We're actually going to use AI here, but it's really spot on in this case. A quick search on the Googly Moogly gives us the explanation. I quote, "Depending on the fire intensity, the affected area will gradually begin to regrow with pioneer species like grasses and ferns with new trees, eventually sprouting from surviving root systems, creating a new ecosystem with altered plant composition as part of a process called ecological succession. In many cases, the fire is actually needed for nature to advance. Now, if you've grown up in South Louisiana, you might have seen the intentional marsh fires lit to revitalize the habitat. It's a thing, and it has its purpose. Every now and then, we all need to be purified. Now, no, I am not saying that everyone in California needed to be purified. There's the disclaimer for the unhinged leftists out there. The point, however, is this. Whatever is happening in Los Angeles right now, through all the sorrow, the pain, the loss of stuff, and yes, even unfortunately, the loss of life, if we don't learn from the tragedy, then that's all it is. It was a tragedy, not a baptism. And that would be an even bigger loss than we already have. What can we learn? Well, lots. How to prepare. How did these get started? How could they have been prevented? Who can you trust at first responders? These are just a few of the questions, but we'll need to make sure we don't stop asking them until we get answers, which means we can't stop asking questions about the Vegas Tesla truck. We can't stop asking questions about Bourbon Street on New Year's Eve. After all, asking questions, baptism, they're all part of your implicit bias. We'll pop a top on some weekly whiskeys, which are near and dear to our hearts in just a few minutes, as they were baptized at Implicit Birthday this year. We'll indulge in some of the offerings from Mr. Lester's Steakhouse down at Cypress Bayou Casino. And well, if you can't laugh with us this week, laugh at us, as we'll bring you 2 hours of solving the problems of the world when we come back with more Implicit Bias Radio. Holy crap, we are on point on this week's episode of Implicit Bias. I'll explain that in just a minute. I'm your host, Kevon Bordelon. Welcome into another 2 hours of solving the problems of the world, one weekly whiskey at a time. And we are going to dive into our first weekly whiskey of this show pretty much right away. But before we do, let me introduce you to the crew who's here in the Mr. Lester's top secret podcast lair. That's the TSPL for the initiated. And we are going to start at the bar. We have sitting behind Deep Blue, the Implicit Bias Infinity Bottle, Grant Galatas of William S. Nacol Jewelers, where you can get your own version of Deep Blue. Grant, how are you? Good to have you back.
Absolutely wonderful to be here as always. Thank you, Kevon.
Yeah, and you can actually pull the mic to you just so you know, so you don't look like you're trying to kiss Renee sitting there at the bar.
He is irresistible.
Yeah, he is. That's why we have him, because he is the certified wizard of tobacco, Louisiana's only certified master tobacconist. Actually, one of only 15 certified master tobacconists on the planet. I'm paying you homage,
Yes.
Renee. I am not
in the
identifying. In the world.
In
Okay.
the world.
In the
Yeah.
world. And we're going to talk to you about what the cigar of the month is going to be in just a few minutes. While you taste this
Yes.
whiskey, we're going to give you some time to get it on the palate, to get some thoughts around it, and we'll go from there. Of course, he's always here. He is the man, the myth, the legend. He says more myth than man. He is Caleb Morse, the rustic renegade. Caleb, man, it feels like the holiday break went really long.
It did. Like, I feel like all of a sudden everything's over and I'm like, whew, I can breathe.
And now you're getting ready to go to SHOT Show.
Yeah.
And I'll be out of town into the month as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like everything.
It's going to be fun, but it's a ton of work.
Yeah, it is. 2025 is rolling. 2025 has been, even though it's young, 2025 has been kind of ugly. It's had some really just bad behavior that we've already seen. Kind of reminds me of Walker Gaffon sitting in the corner. You like that setup? It took me a
was
couple
good. That was
seconds.
good.
Yeah. Walker, who is unavailable on camera. Walker, how are you?
I'm doing good.
How was your New Year's?
It was good. How about
Everything-
you?
Yeah, it was good. Everything else has been good for you?
Yes, sir.
Good. Glad to hear it. You played any golf lately? We really don't care. So let's dive into our weekly whiskey and tell you why I said we were on point on this week's episode. So we're going to start with this Remus cask strength pick from New News, located in Youngsville, Louisiana. They've actually got locations in Maurice and Scott and Milton. But this Remus is really special. So first of all, it's cask strength, which means, and this one comes in at, somebody want to remind me,
118.1.
118.1. Okay, so the proof is up there.
Mm-hmm.
But this particular pick from New News had some really special help. This particular pick from New News had maybe a little bit of, if you're listening out there, you might actually be the one who contributed your implicit bias.
Really? This is it?
This is it.
Oh.
This is the bottle
Pray tell,
that was
Rabbit.
picked at Implicit birthday last July. They finally got it in. It hit the shelves, just a few days ago. It's actually on the shelf there now. And this is what those who contributed to charity, because whoever paid to be in on that,
Yep.
everything they paid went straight to a local charity. New News doing a great job with that. We were glad we could help provide that.
Well, and did you taste it at all during the tasting?
I did not.
I didn't either. Like this was tasting this was a surprise.
It was a total surprise to me. At the bar, so Grant, Renee, did either of you get to try this in the tasting process?
No, I wasn't invited to that room. They kept me outside. You know, they said, you're not on the list. Sorry.
If it makes you feel any better, I wasn't in that room either, and neither was Caleb.
You know, it's pretty bad when you throw a party and you're not even invited to your own party.
Here's the deal. That was all about raising money.
And it did a great job.
It did, for a great cause. And it did a great job. And they did a fantastic job with this pick.
So wait, so now you're implying that we were too cheap to pay money to go in there.
No, Renee,
No, we just,
I was not too cheap. You were too cheap.
Okay.
That's you.
Well, you know, I put you in there with me. I thought you were like me.
We
I
put
just
the event on,
understood that I
right?
could do better outside the room, I think is what it was. Because
Yeah, we
when I
were out.
walked by,
We were out schmoozing with people.
Yeah.
That's what it
I was
was.
working the room.
Yeah.
Because when I walked by, like we had some great guys in there, and they had a good event. I walked in afterwards whenever all the votes were already cast, and they actually offered me some, and I was like, you know what, I'll try it when it comes in, and I think they did a phenomenal job. This choice, I don't think it was unanimous. I think they went through and they voted, but I tell you, however they did this, however they chose it, even if afterwards Aaron was like, I don't care what y'all said, this is what we're getting. Whatever the process was, well done, sirs. Well done.
What I know is this. Our partners at New News had a fantastic time actually facilitating the tasting and the barrel pick experience. If this is what we are cranking out consistently, we're going to do our own. I'm just saying, at some point, we're going to do our own, because this, oh my goodness. Grant, I'm going to let you start because you haven't had a chance to chime in on this, and I know you weren't in the room when they were actually doing the tasting.
If I was, I didn't remember.
Okay, so
Those events will do that.
So what do you think of this New News cask strength barrel pick from Remus at 118.1?
Wow, that's a friendly 118.1.
Yeah, it is.
It really is. I mean, usually something of that high proof, it lets you know it's there. But the flavor just instantly, and it stays on the throat for a little bit, and nice oaky caramelly, which is what I look for. Wow, that's very well done.
Okay, I'm with you as far as you get just the right amount of oak, you get just the right amount of caramel, you get some vanilla in it. I mean, the flavor notes on this, I mean, just absolutely Rochambeau me right in the feels every time I take a sip.
Yeah, it checks all my boxes, basically.
What's that for? What's that look for, Caleb?
I remember that episode of South Park, and I was like, oh, that's how it started. That's how it started.
Yeah. All right. Renee, what do you think about this one?
Not one of my favorites.
Are you kidding me,
no,
Renee?
I'm not. Well, I guess it's been so long since I had whiskey. I only drink whiskey when I'm on the show here. So it's been, it seems like months since we recorded the last episode with all the holidays. But no, the first drink of this one, man, it just burned. I was like, ooh. And that was unusual because I'd gotten kind of used to 115s, 120s, and it was just too much for me. Now, later on, it smoothed out a little bit,
So
but it's still.
I need to ask a question. I'm raising my hand here.
Okay.
Who couldn't wait to open the bottle?
Me, because I was anxious trying to get it.
Which means that who opened the bottle and got what is known as the neck pour?
But when I
Normally, I
poured
take
it,
that.
I let it sit. I swirled it a bit. I let it sit a while before I took the first sip because I knew that was going to happen.
Last question, and I know the answer to this one as well. Who's a giant wuss sitting at the bar who doesn't normally drink whiskey?
Grant?
All All right. So you think this one just hits
Yeah,
you a
it
little
just-
too much?
It's a little too hot for me.
Interesting.
It really
okay.
is.
All right. Grant, your thoughts. You gave us kind of your initial thoughts. Any rebuttal to that Renee has? I want to get like a full-on argument going at the bar. I want to see you fighting at the bar over this.
No.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with the neck pour thing because usually the 118s will come at you a little bit quicker, but this one the flavor is just round that 118 off so nicely. It's just I enjoy the flavor. I would have thought this was 105, 108 somewhere around in that neighborhood.
I'm absolutely with you. All right, Walker, because Walker is the blossoming whiskey snob here in the TSPL. What are your thoughts?
Did we pour him any?
Oh, we didn't pour him any.
No, I didn't even.
Well,
spit in
shocker.
his
We'll just
glass
leave him
this
out then.
time.
Okay, Caleb, what about you? We'll get him some in a minute.
Give me a little more, Mike. There we go. Pour him some. On the nose, vanilla, heavy vanilla, caramel, maybe even like flat Dr. Pepper or flat Coke on the nose. There's a distinct smell, you know.
I get a little bit of it. I do.
And then on the palate, I wrote. So here we go. I remember as a little kid, there was a soda shop that we would walk to with my grandfather every once in a while, and I remember getting a homemade like vanilla Coke, and with real vanilla syrup, that kind of stuff, and they made it right there with you. And this to me is a real legitimate, not buying the can, but a legitimate vanilla Coke. Either vanilla Coke or vanilla Dr. Pepper, one of the two. I think probably more toward the Coke. Man, it is delicious. This is almost like dessertable. This, if it was carbonated, I would think it is a legitimate vanilla Coke. I think that if you would, even like we were talking before, Grant, put some ice cream in this and you can have a whiskey float.
Caleb, I'm just going to start wearing a pair of hip boots here because it gets so deep when you start on your thoughts and ideas, but I don't even know that that's a bad one. I'm not sure it's a bad one.
I'm thinking about trying it. I am, because I think that a little ice cream in there, I mean, look, I don't know about mixing a dairy with a whiskey. I have no clue what that'll do to my stomach, but one way to find out. But like, I want to try this. I want to try it. Maybe with some Dippin' Dots or something.
Look,
you know?
it could bring a whole new fun to colonoscopy prep. It's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
I'm just saying. Speaking of colonoscopy prep, Walker, what do you think of this now that you have a pour?
I do get the Coke, like you said, a lot, the vanilla. And for it being 118, it's really not bad at all when it hits you.
I am with Grant, Walker, Caleb. At 118 proof, this goes down way too smooth.
Oh, yeah.
You don't quite get that cotton candy effect on the palate. You don't quite have enough proof on the palate for that. But oh my goodness, it is oily, which I really like. The finish on it is stupid long. The finish on this, you take that sip, it sits with you, it lingers, and it makes you want more. That's what's really, to me, dangerous about this particular Remus. And I'm going to be honest. I've never had a Remus that I went, oh, that's not just good, that's special. I've had a Remus before and I've been like, it's all right, it's okay, right? This one, this is special. This is unique. This is one of those that I'm going to say, because I know what this costs, I would say instead of spending 130, 140 on some bottles, you go buy this for what it costs. And man, when I tell you, you are absolutely going to thank us for this particular recommendation. And for those who were part of the panel, and I can't remember everybody who was on the panel. I remember 3 of the names. I don't want to leave anybody out. But what I will say is, because there were 5 seats at the table, if I remember correctly. I remember that Lee Ritter, who's a member of the crew, was one of those seats. That Short Pour was actually one of those seats as well. Burley Pellerin and Corey Kimball, longtime listener of the show. He showed up at the event and he showed out and made sure that he was a part of that tasting. I'm going to go back and look. I've got the records because I want to make sure everybody gets notified that they have an opportunity to buy one of these. Go get it. Go get it quickly. Because if anybody finds out how good this is, which you're probably going to if you're listening to the show, you're not going to walk to get one of these. You're going to run to get one of these.
Yeah, and it's one of those ones where you're probably going to want 2. Just warning you. because anything worth buying one is worth buying two.
Maybe 3 on this one.
1 is none, 2 is 1, 3's a spare.
And you'll never see this again.
No. Once
This
the
will
barrel's
be-
gone, it's gone.
This will be unobtainium once those bottles are gone. You'll never repeat this. And man, yeah. Okay, so let's start at the bar. Number 1, where would you rate this? Red, I wouldn't drink it even if it was free. A yellow, I would only drink it if it was free. A green, I would buy it. A blue, I would seek this out. That's the Morse Whiskey rating code. And what would you pay? Now, I have to give a disclaimer here. I've got to play Sonny Holston for a second. The What Would You Pay Championship belt chain presented by Box Drop of Lafayette is actually not with us. It's getting upgraded. It will be back. We'll have it back on the show. But just know that whoever wins it doesn't have to wear it for this week. So, no falsifying your guesses because you don't feel like giving yourself a neck workout for this particular show. All right, let's start at the bar. I don't care who goes first. What would you rate this? Red, yellow, green, blue. And what would you pay?
I'm going to defer to Renee so we can get his green out of the way.
He's going to give it a yellow. Watch.
Yes. I'm going to give it a yellow.
And he's going to be wrong.
Well, no, because
Wrong.
my implicit bias says it's a yellow.
You know what mine says? Wrong. That's what mine says. Wrong. Yep. Okay, so you give it a yellow.
Yeah, I'll give it a yellow. It's just, it just didn't hit me right. I don't know. I'm guessing $59.
$59. All right. K and B.
I'd like to blue this one.
Okay.
But I had a question
Yeah.
for you guys. Because I know there's been other bottles that we've had that sometimes it gets too sweet. Would y'all put this in the too sweet? Because, the flavors do hit you well. And I know I've heard y'all say before that it's too sweet, too caramelly, does this hit that?
No.
No?
Nope.
Not at all?
Nope, not for me. This almost, and this is the flavor that I think I was shooting for. I'm actually glad you said that. We had a bottle on the show years ago called Unobtainium.
Mhm.
That was the name of the bottle. It was 127 proof or 137 proof.
It was up there.
And it tasted like you were drinking cream soda, if you remember.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
This approaches that. It
Okay,
almost
yeah.
gives you a little bit of a cream soda-ish flavor, but it's not that sweet. So to me, this isn't oversweet, and it's got enough of an edge, enough aggression on it to offset the sweet. So enough spice to
Well, and-
offset the sweet.
And I think what you might be alluding to is it too sweet to drink all night? And look, I just poured my second glass because I don't want to give it a rating until I have 2 glasses. So
Liar.
yeah, that's how I really know if I enjoy it.
You know what? Okay, so there's real quick rabbit hole. There's actually a show on TLC about a girl who's got Tourette's. And I kind of want to channel her on the show and be like, liar, liar,
Oh.
liar.
I was
Liar,
about to channel
because that's what she does.
I was going to channel the Tourette's from the bartender on Boondock Saints for there, but then
Oh,
I
no,
looked at Walker and I was
no.
like, he didn't get the look.
Nope,
so
can't do that. Can't do that. All right, back to your story. Sorry.
beep beep. So, no, but I don't think I could drink this all night. I don't. I do think it's too sweet to enjoy from start to finish, but it is the perfect balance to have it at the start or at the finish. This is probably like a 3 or 4 glasser for me, and after that, it would be
Drunk.
yeah, maybe. We'll find out. But at that point, it might be a little too sweet for me if I had like 3 or 4 glasses of it. But 2, I'm definitely good with 2. I like 2. So this is a blue for me. No questions asked. I even wrote Renee's name next to yellow instead of just putting 1. So
All right, Walker, we're going to go a little long here. I know you gave me the finger, but this has been just a pleasure to taste and to rate. So we've got to get your rating and what would you pay? Caleb, what would you pay? Just curious.
oh, I forgot. I didn't write down. Did you say what you were gonna pay?
No, I didn't say that.
Here.
Oh, okay, Grant, what would you pay?
Since the belt's not on the line, the overhaul that it's getting, is it a neck brace?
No, it's
That
not a
they're
neck
putting-
brace.
Okay. I'm gonna go a little higher. I'm gonna say about 79 for this one.
79, Caleb?
I know where these come in at, so it's unfair. $63.28.
All right, 63.28 blue. Grant, you said 79 blue. Renee, we don't care what you said. Walker,
Blue 65.
Blue
Son
and
of a-
65. Here's the irony here. This is absolutely a blue. It's $56.99 at New News. $56.99 for this Remus store pick cask strength from New News. An absolutely fantastic offering. Walker's been giving me the finger for a while, and that's the 1 minute finger, not that finger. We know where your mind is. So we're going to take a break. We're going to come back and we're going to dive into the stories. We're going to solve the problems of the world. This first story we're going to talk about, man, it's in fuego, and it will probably take the remainder of hour one to cover everything we need to cover about this story when we come back with more Implicit Bias Radio. Implicit Bias rolls on hour one. I'm your host, Kevon Bordelon, and yes, when I said we are on fire, we are in fuego, that is one of the stories that we absolutely have to discuss on this week's show. We're coming to you from somewhere in downtown Lafayette, Louisiana, the top secret podcast lair, presented by Mr. Lester Steakhouse, the only 5-star restaurant between New Orleans and Houston. Let me welcome you back into the crew. Sitting at the bar, Grant Galatas, a.k.a. K&B, otherwise known as Kennebra, and also the convenience store. I guess he's convenient. I don't know. And of course, Rene Girard, Louisiana's only certified master tobacconist. Of course, in the chair like mine, he is the rustic renegade, Caleb Morse, and we are sipping this delicious New News Remus pick at 118 proof. And then, of course, in the corner, there's Walker. So you can't see him. You might hear him. Sorry. Let's go ahead and dive into the big story, though. And this is the one that everybody's been talking about, everybody's been seeing, and let's be brutally honest, it is nightmarish. Some of the video that we have seen out of California of flames surrounding homes because of the winds, because of all this, but there's so much to these stories, and there's so much speculation. There's so much innuendo. There's so much fact that has come out. There is so much to glean off of this story that this may be the last thing we discuss in this particular hour of Implicit Bias. So I'm curious. I don't know who wants to go first, but let's open it up to thoughts. Caleb, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I'll jump right in. So, not this Wednesday, but last. Yeah, Wednesday before last. A friend of mine actually sends me a text. He goes, "Hey, if you don't mind saying a prayer, my son just lost everything." And his son does photography, video editing, all that kind of stuff. 3 months ago, he gets a letter in the mail from their insurance company saying that they were going to drop the fire coverage.
There's a big part of the story.
Yep. So that happens. This all comes out. And when they were evacuating, guess what he didn't have room for in his vehicle?
All of his equipment.
Like, pronounce both L's. But he did say that since this travesty has happened, he has seen the hand of God in his life everywhere he goes, because he gets to see through an unfiltered lens the community that he's surrounded with, not just there, but here. And the outpouring of love and reach. And look, it's horrible. I can't imagine losing everything in that kind of manner. I mean, we see flooding down here. We see hurricanes. We see all the other natural disasters. Fire is not one of them that we're really common for.
But the financial implications of this is much like or worse than a hurricane. I mean, this is Katrina-ish or worse.
Yep. And then
when you think about where this is going to go as far as the total bill for the damage.
Right now it's at what, 39 billion or something like that? It's some ridiculous
I'm shocked
number.
It's that low.
And then the other issue they're facing is, there's all these allegations that it is arson.
Well, we'll talk about those in a minute.
Okay.
Because you've got multiple potential reasons and ways that these fires are starting. So, Renee, I'm curious as to your initial thoughts and what jumps out at you about this story.
It's total mismanagement of everything with the government in California.
There's another part of it.
Okay. Why did the insurance company start to pull out before the fire started?
So I can answer that question for you. It's because the California government passed a law that said the insurance companies were never going to be allowed to get like a price hike or raise their rates or anything of that nature. So the businesses that are insurance companies said, we're not doing business here anymore.
That's not the only reason. Why would they want a price hike? Because there was more risk. Why was there more risk? Because the government did not clear out the undergrowth. They did not build the 4 reservoirs that they got money to build, billions of dollars that we don't know where the money is. And then they let reservoirs that did exist not fill up because all of that water's got to go to the Pacific Ocean, according to California government. So if I was an insurance company, I would have pulled all of that too. And people, that should have lit some light bulbs in people's heads about, wait, we got an issue here. If they're pulling out, they're getting paid, but they're still pulling out,
So
there's problems.
So, Renee, wait. There are now stories of a group of firefighters who went to the fire chief and said, people are going to die because of the way that we are managing current systems and infrastructure.
Yes.
And they were basically told, get out.
And we cut $17 million out of the LA fire budget. And also, there was firefighters from Oregon volunteered to come in and do it. And the government of California said, whoop, stop. You can't bring those trucks here because they don't meet California emissions.
Renee, I'm just curious. Are you like on Prevagen or something? Because your memory of all this stuff is pretty good.
Well, I've been watching and I lived there when I was a kid. I know California's a beautiful place, but the government mismanagement is just a travesty.
It's terrible.
They got what they voted for.
Did anyone here see the videos before all this that the new fire chief put out?
Yes, I saw those where basically the fire chief said, we're focusing on DEI.
Yeah,
That's
they
all
said
we're
DEI.
focusing
Well,
on.
she was a DEI hot.
Yes,
She was.
and she said, look, can I, I've been asked questions like, can I pick up your husband if my house is on fire? And her response is, well, he got himself in this mess. He was in the wrong place.
Yeah.
And I was like, damn.
Look, here's what I know. What I know is every firefighter that I have ever known personally would be offended at that statement because firefighters, that's what they do. They're like, your house is on fire.
Yeah, but
we're running in to
that
save
video,
you.
if she's a chief, she was a chief in a small department because the fire chief for LA is an older woman and
But that's her point.
She's a
That's the
DEI.
point. Yeah.
She's a DEI hire.
And that's
also.
her point. She's like, well, that's not my job. I'm not doing that.
Yep.
And she was hired for other political reasons.
Yes.
Not for ability, be it physical or professional ability.
All right, Grant, what was the first thing that jumped out at you from?
I think that's what you were looking for, the human. I mean, there's months and years to go through all of this with a fine-tooth comb and point fingers and do whatever. Try and find some semblance of sanity to how they approach this. But the first thing that hit me, and I have it on while I'm working all day, so I've been listening to this 24/7. Watching the video of that guy who was trapped in his house with his dog. And
Yes.
the exterior, beautiful home, beautiful interior of the home, had its little pool area and stuff, but just outside the windows, the size of the flames, spurred on by 70, 80 mile an hour winds. And it was as if this guy had the biggest IMAX screen set up outside and he was watching the movie of hell.
Yeah. I don't disagree with you.
Just as, from a human element, that's horrifying. I cannot imagine looking out of the window of your home, of what you call home for so many years, and seeing the torrent of flames completely surrounding you. And this guy apparently lived.
Well, this is almost a biblical fire. When you look at the scale, scope, the size, the speed, this is one that I look at and think, because when we think of big fires in the U.S., we think the Great Fire of Chicago. Mm-hmm. I don't know that fire has anything on this fire in California.
I think this was already claimed to be the largest, we'll call it wildfire.
I don't know if you can call it a wildfire.
Well, but
it is an uncontrolled fire.
But in like United States history, this is massive. It is huge. It is thousands and thousands of acres. It is
and in several
astonishing.
with several sparking points.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a bad combination of timing, but you want to be suspicious initially, but the combination of all the winds, do you realize how easy it would be? And we've all seen the video of the guy riding through the neighborhood with the blowtorch. But do you know how easy?
Okay, so hold on. You got to stop right there. I don't know that everybody's seen that video. There is video of a guy riding through, and please don't believe me on this. Go look up on X. Arson's Fire California, I'm telling you, you'll find it. Guys riding through a neighborhood on his bike with a blowtorch, just lighting fires as he goes.
Right.
Well, and
But
is that
think-
someone who's like just high on something at that point in time that happens to be legal in California, or is it like really educated thought process? That's what I'm concerned about too. So.
Yeah, we'll probably hear more on that later.
Mhm.
But the conditions, and usually you hear about these fires, and they say, well, what started it? And it's something as easy as flicking a cigarette out the window.
It could be.
So for 6 different spark up points and that amount of wind, the combination of so many different elements, I can see one accidental or maybe 2, but to have so many different sparking points in those conditions for it to be so widespread.
Here's
it's
the
just-
interesting part.
It's curious.
They can all be true. You could have one that was accidental. I mean, there's part of this story when you start to think about what started the fire. So, Renee, you talk about total failure in California. There's a lot of us who have smart meters on our homes. But smart meters are now, if you look at part of this story, people are saying the smart meters at a certain temperature start to melt and they can actually make this worse. So if you get a fire close enough, well, just the heat from the other fire will now set your home potentially on fire. I mean, so there's that accusation. So you could have that accidental part of it. You could have an accidental part of it of where you just got winds and now it blows down a power line, which sets something on fire.
right.
You could have also somebody going, we got 1 fire, we got 2 fires. I was sent here to be a sleeper cell. Now I'm being told go set more fires in LA. I
Right.
mean, all of these things could be true in some way, shape, or form to make it this big and this large.
Well, look, but initial impressions and just overall impressions from this is the human element of it. Caleb Shelby, the watch guy,
Yeah.
he has a son lives in L.A., so he's been texting me all week long, and they're on watch. You're on evacuation watch. So even the people who think they're in the clear right now, they're living in a constant state of get up and get out.
Because
Is
the
it
wind
coming?
changes all it takes.
Yeah, and you're just waiting. So just the human element, not only the people who have lost everything, but everyone in the entire area. So overall impression of this is just the human element of it is just it's horrifying.
It is. It's
Well,
terrible.
and then the difficulty with it is, let's say you're going to go through and you're going to make fire breaks, right? Take a D9, dig a V ditch, and do it 2 blades wide. So now we're talking 24 feet wide, roughly. If you do that and prep it, that's people's homes you have to go through.
Yeah.
That's other things to make this the right area, right? Because it has to be a certain shape. So you're limited on what you can do because at that point the state's doing it. So that's intentional. The insurance wouldn't cover it, and you're really limited by what you can do geographically because of the preparation needed.
Yeah, but I don't even at that point. I don't think cutting fire breaks are going to stop it because with the winds coming as strong as they are, they're blowing those embers
Yeah.
miles.
And don't worry, we are not going to stop it. Even though Walker's trying to give me the finger over here, it's not going to happen. We're going to take a break. We're going to continue this conversation because there's still more to this when we come back on Implicit Bias Radio. Final segment of hour 1 of this week's episode of Implicit Bias. If you want to see what the crew looks like, find us on X, find us on Facebook, find us on YouTube, find us on Instagram. We'll have clips there. We'll have whole shows there. You can actually find us also anywhere you find podcasts. Implicit Bias Radio, or even just go to implicitbiasradio.com. You can see what the Mr. Lester's TSPL looks like. You can see what I look like. I'm sorry. You can see what Caleb looks like. I'm even more sorry. Or you can see what the bar looks like here in the TSPL. But we do care enough about you to not show you what Walker looks like. All right, so let's go ahead and dive in. Walker, you know that was funny. You know that wasn't funny, Walker? You got it. This is a visual medium, Walker, and nobody can see you. You have to say it into the mic.
Nodding his head.
You
It
have to
was
say-
hilarious.
Yeah, yes, that's what I thought. Okay. So back to the story that we were talking about, which I said there's so much more here. The one thing that jumped out to me, and this is about pattern recognition from the fires in California. If you start to recognize patterns, you can sometimes see what's coming. And this is one where we're getting a pattern. Well, there was a group of people who talked about, I think it was called, Project 2022 or Project 20 something, whatever.
2025. I think.
2025, but it was before COVID hit that they came out and were discussing, hey, here's how we should react if we get a massive viral contagion. And it was like September 2019, right before COVID hit in February. My shock face. Here's another aspect of the LA fire that not a lot of people are talking about. But, 2, 3, 4 months ago, they were talking about the smart city that LA would become, but also said it'll never happen because we would have to raise 3/4 of the city of Los Angeles. Take a guess what's now happened as Gavin Newsom gets in front of cameras and talks about the redevelopment of Los Angeles. And in some instances, they're even saying things like, I don't know that we'll have the residential density that we had before, or something of that nature. In other words, your home might have been there before, but with the redevelopment, maybe it won't. This really bothers me because this is one that if we're looking at pattern recognition again, we're starting to go, okay, so we know what happened with COVID and they telegraphed their punch. Did they telegraph their punch again?
So, when it comes to natural disasters, there are plenty of private entities that capitalize on our misfortune, right? Hurricanes throughout the United States, they go in afterwards and like, look, yep, you owned your house, this whole block. Insurance money will pay you this much. We'll pay you that much plus 25%, and we'll buy you out. No redo anything else. We'll take it and we'll own the property and we'll handle all that.
Here's the worst part. A lot of these people, as we discussed in the last segment, they no longer have insurance to pay them that.
So now they have people that are going to come in and they're going to offer to buy everything from them for maybe pennies on the dollar, or they might offer you a little bit more. Long term, we'll see.
Oh, nickels on the dollar.
Nickels on the dollar, yeah. And they're going to go in and do property development. But you're not having someone go in and buy like 1 or 2 houses. You're having a firm that goes in and buys square miles. And then these firms that buy square miles work with other firms that buy square miles. And they have their own vision for the future. So what we saw is a group conglomerate with a vision for the future because they knew it was on the horizon. These people are investors. They are smart and they understand what happens in a natural disaster. They know how hurricanes work. They know how tsunamis work. They know how fires work. And they see when the fruit is ripe for the picking.
Well, you look at it this way, at least they won't have to mow down forest and stuff to put solar farms up. They'll have a bunch of clear property now.
Oh,
that poor little
it's there.
iguana lost his home.
Well, LA wants to be green energy. There you go, buddy.
Yep.
Got a lot of space to put solar farms.
Well, and you look at these people that owned these palatial homes, and now they're like, oh, well, that's one of 3.
Yeah.
I mean, did y'all see the video that came out, and it's Mel Gibson talking to Brandt? Is it Richard Brandt?
Yeah, I believe so.
And he's like, oh, look at my phone. He goes, my house is on fire right now.
Well, one of his houses.
Yeah.
So hold on. That's maybe the next part of this story, which is as we start getting down the rabbit hole, you now have celebrities.
Mhm.
Please don't believe me on this one. Please go look this up. You have celebrities who have come out and said, these fires were intentional, and they were intentional because you know what fire's really wonderful to burn? You know what's really hard to get from a scene that has burned, especially as thoroughly as this has? Evidence.
Man,
And
you're bringing Diddy back into this.
You've got celebrities who are saying this
It's not
this
like
is-
baby oil's flammable.
this is all to get rid of the evidence of what Hollywood elites have been doing for years, and they're scared to death of what's going to happen with a new administration about to walk in because they're worried they're going to be prosecuted, aka they're worried they're going to have a Diddy party.
Well, yeah, I mean, you don't have to burn a house down to get rid of that evidence. There's other ways. There's other ways they can get rid of evidence.
DNA when it's all over the home.
If you want to
I'm
get
not going there, but
if you want to get rid of a whole lot of evidence for a whole lot of people all at once, man, a fire's a pretty good idea.
Well, it's going to divert a lot of attention other places that are away from yours. But I think that's a little extreme on that part.
I'm sure it's extreme, but I'm sure it's also.
I think I'd give it that it's just piss poor management.
here's
on the
the
government.
I'm
So
no
here's the-
fan of Gavin
I'm going to
Newsom.
blame it on the government.
Here's
I'm
the
no
really-
fan of him, but look, even he's not that smart.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, they didn't do their job. That's why they're suffering that right now.
Here's the really fun part. Go look at a list of celebrities whose homes have burned and cross-reference that list with the suspected list from the Diddy white parties and the freak-offs and the Epsteins and all this of the world. When you start cross-referencing these and you're like, wait a minute.
Well, wait,
You don't have to
Did-
cross-reference. There's
did
one
Diddy-
already on X.
Did Diddy?
I saw it. It was
did
60
Diddy's
names.
house burn? Was
I don't know
Diddy's
that
house
Diddy's-
one of?
I don't know
See,
that
now if you
I
Diddy's
don't know if
LA
it's
home burn.
flammable anymore.
If you're gonna burn something, that's the one you need to burn.
Well, no, because the FBI's already been through it. Grant, you wanted to chime in.
No, just get off the whole Diddy thing because they went through his house and from floor to ceiling. Fire would have done nothing just other than clear away the slime. that
Yeah,
was
but
left
here's
on-
the
on
but
that
here's
little
the
piece
but
of
here's the
property.
really sad part. The really sad part is we know that Diddy didn't throw a party, just him and himself. Diddy had a party with all of his friends. And you start go and look up people who are in pictures with Diddy and people who've attended parties with Diddy.
Yeah,
and
it's-
then
it's quite a list.
it is quite a list. And then when you look at people whose homes have burned, you're like,
Look, it's funny. It made me think of that. Remember that game? They used to have a game, 7 Degrees of Separation from Kevin Bacon.
yeah, it's 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon.
Yeah, but this
Yes.
is like 2 degrees from Diddy.
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
You just shake a stick. But look,
This is like 24 inches from Diddy.
But where you went?
I wouldn't say that.
Where you went initially with this, it reeked of the Maui situation.
There's a whole nother
Oh,
look
you
at
talking
this.
about the blue? That's the blue trash.
no,
cans
no,
that burn.
no, not about the how it originated, but trying to burn like local people out of their area.
When that goes back to the real
you're talking
estate
about an
development.
area where people have a lot of wealth and a lot of means. So these people, even though insurance may not back them, I don't think they're going to vacate their property or their hometown just. And you need everyone to agree to that.
But interesting.
You're talking about people with money.
Agreed.
Usually that kind
Well-
of plot involves clearing out the lower income group of people.
some of them have money.
because the
Well, hold
land is
on.
desirable.
To go in with that, have you seen about the exotic cars that have been burning? A lot of these people bought Ferraris, Lamborghinis, and Koenigsegg and so forth during COVID, right? And they paid 30% too much for these vehicles. They were financed. Well, down here, what happens when a hurricane comes up? If it's got a note, let it float.
Yep.
Over there, if you got to pay, give it away, right? Let it catch on fire. There are people driving Ferraris, driving Lamborghinis into the fires.
Oh, dear
Well,
Lord.
I mean,
And it's not people who can't live within it's not people who don't have the means. They have videos of celebrities doing this.
well, and you
So-
look at some of these houses in Malibu and everything, right? They're right on the coast, literally on the ocean side of the Pacific Highway.
Yeah.
You don't think that they're going to get a permit? They're not going to get a permit for that property, probably. They're going to just leave that open so where, people can
Opens
see
the
this.
skyline.
Yes, exactly.
And Grant, to your point, some of these people have means, some don't. The reality is to do what they were talking about doing with LA, they don't just need the lower income families out. They need everybody out.
They need all of it.
everybody out.
And that's what I was saying, because if you need everyone out of an area, the low income and the high income people are going to say, no, we've got this.
Yeah, I don't care about the
They
money.
take yeah, correct. So I mean that's an awful big scheme for something like that. I can see better areas to do it than this, because these people do have money and they do have means other than their insurance.
So you think that the people who have money would not sell because you think they can rebuild?
Oh, absolutely.
So here's where I am with this, and this is a really interesting part of this conversation. Go look at the number of celebrities who have declared bankruptcy in the last 2, 3 to 5 years.
Yeah.
You've got a lot of people that we think have means.
Yeah, they haven't
And they
worked
have
in a while.
crippling debt.
They are dirt broke. They
Yeah.
are in over their head. They are financed up to their eyeballs, right? So this would be one of those scenarios where maybe they do
better
need
to
to
get
buy.
out.
I mean,
Yeah.
for crying out loud,
Easier to get out that way.
for crying out loud, the Rothschilds have put up multiple pieces of property in the last 5 years for auction. And this is supposed to be one of the richest families on the planet. You know who else is rich? You are. Why? Because hour 2 of Implicit Bias is coming around the corner. If your market doesn't get hour 2, call them. Tell them, I want my Implicit Bias radio right here in hour 2 when we come back. We are having way more fun than we should be allowed to have on this week's episode of Implicit Bias. I'm Kevon Bordelon, your host. This is hour 2 of this week's episode. If you missed anything of this episode, go back, find us on all of our socials. Go to implicitbiasradio.com. Find us on X, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. We're all over it. And yes, unfortunately, you can see us. It's okay. Trust me, we're not going to break your computer. Well, that's why we keep Walker off the air. Anyway, let's go ahead and dive in. I'll introduce you to the crew. We'll tell you about the whiskeys that we're drinking in hour 2. Many in the TSPL here, presented by Mr. Lester's, are drinking the whiskeys that are available at Mr. Lester's this month, including the Forbidden series out of, do we remember which one that is, Caleb?
No.
No.
I could look in the book that's right next to me and it'll tell me.
Renee, Kentucky. Oh, yeah, we'll find it. But the Forbidden series and then it's Bardstown. Bardstown. Took me a second.
Yes.
And then it's Bluestone Manor. Those are available for a pittance. $15 a pour, $30 for the flight. $15 for the pour, $30 for the flight.
They're so aggressive with their pricing. And that's the thing, is they want people to come there and taste these bourbons that you're not going to find. They want you to come there and be like, look, I want to try it before I buy it. I want to go and enjoy something maybe that I can't see because it's unobtainium, and just really enjoy the ambiance.
Now, I know what we're supposed to have for February. And what I'm saying is, go get January. February could be really special too. February might even be almost pure unobtainium. We'll get to that in February.
Oh,
Sorry
like-
to tease you with
Like
that.
true love because it's during Valentine's Day?
Could be. Could be. Okay. Which, by the way, is the only reason to bring someone back from the dead. Anyway, let's go from there. Caleb gets the joke.
Yeah.
So let's dive in. You've heard and seen the crew. That is Caleb Morse, the Rustic Renegade. What, Caleb?
I hear, well, no. He said to blave.
To blame,
Yeah,
which
sorry.
means to bluff. Yeah, no,
sorry,
that's not
sorry.
what it is. All right, that's Caleb Morse at the bar. K&B Grant Galatas, the CWAT, the Certified Wizard of Tobacco. Renee Girard, Louisiana's only certified master tobacconist, 1 of 15 in the world. All right, so speaking of that, Renee, since you've had a taste of both what's available at Mr. Lester's this month,
No,
the Forbidden series.
I had one.
Well, you've had one of those, and you've had the Remus
yeah.
from
The-
New News.
I like the Forbidden one better.
I did. I wasn't asking you that. What I was
Okay.
going to ask you was,
That's not, like, it's okay. You can
what
really
would be
enjoy that.
what would be your cigar of the month?
Oh, well, I would pick a very rare cigar. Not unobtainium, but it's the Amazon Basin. It's done by CAO. Comes out once a year,
Okay.
and we just got our allocation of 5 boxes in
Okay.
2 days ago. And so it's a cigar that everybody looks for.
Why that cigar with these 2 whiskeys?
Well,
What flavors you're going to get?
it's it's the thing is it's got a slight sweetness to it, which is not artificial. It's just the tobaccos they put in it. It's got a sweetness to it, and one of the tobaccos is grown in the Amazon Basin, which hence the name.
You would hope so,
Yes.
since the cigar is named the
But
Amazon
it's
Basin.
it's a very limited production tobacco. Bragancia is the tobacco, and it's got a slight sweetness to it. It's just an awesome cigar.
So
And
I'm just-
in fact, cigar people, they look forward to this cigar's release every year.
and
'cause
this
it's
and
usually
this
about
tobacco
that.
is grown in Nova Scotia, right?
Right, Nova Scotia.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. I didn't know if it was Nova Scotia or if it was somewhere in Greenland, which will soon
No.
be part of the U.S.
And they don't grow a lot of stuff in Greenland.
No,
It's-
they really don't.
It's very misnamed.
Well, man, we're
It
gonna
should be like Whiteland.
we're
or
gonna go down
something.
this rabbit hole because Iceland is primarily green
Yes.
as far as the topography goes.
Right.
Greenland is primarily ice as the topography
Well,
goes.
it was a Norse trick.
Well, okay, so you were taught the same thing I was.
Yeah,
Caleb.
it was a Norse trick. They were like, don't attack here. It's icy. So
So Greenland was the nice, lush,
Yeah.
beautiful island.
Go
and
there.
Iceland, or I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Iceland was the nice,
Yeah.
lush, beautiful island. And Greenland, where they're like, oh, we're going to go attack Greenland. Greenland is the
What-
harsh,
what makes it
terrible-
worse is like some people went there when they were like, you know what? I can live here. It's a tundra.
It is.
The whole thing's, and they stuck it out and they eat raw, nasty fish that
They
are
have-
fermented.
they
I
have-
have seen
they-
some of that, the Greenland shark. that
Yeah, it's
they-
called like glug glug. I don't know.
Yeah,
what
it
It's
looks
something
like it's
They
based on
got
a
people
dare.
from Green Bay, Wisconsin that live there in the frozen tundra of Lambeau Field.
And you know, the whole time you're saying Amazon Basin, I'm like, thank God there's not a cigar that's called like the Atchafalaya Basin.
Oh yeah, that would be nasty.
Okay.
He just
So I said we were having more fun than we're normally allowed to have. Saw something and I said, you know, we absolutely need to do this on the show. And then I messed up the initial instructions, but it was a quick fix here during one of the breaks. I asked each of you to come up with the number one movie from the year that you were 10 years old. So, Walker, let's start with you. What was the number one movie when you were 10?
Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2.
Part 2.
Part 2. Okay.
There was a part 1?
yes, there was a
Yeah,
part
there was.
one that was the year before Walker was.
Well,
Kim.
let's be honest. The book, Caleb, there was one book, and they said, "Oh, we can make more money if we make this into 2 movies
Yes.
instead of 1."
Yes.
So they made 2 movies so they could double dip out of your
Well,
wallet.
I know to surprise you, when you look at me, you thought he read the books. I didn't. I didn't see the movies either. So
Yep. We've already talked about why Harry Potter ruined the world on this show. That's okay. All right, let's go to the bar. Renee, what is your number one movie from the year that you were 10?
The Godfather.
Oh.
okay.
Okay. Yeah, Grant says he wins. We'll see. Grant, what about you? What was the number one movie from the year you were 10?
Well, one was best grossing and one was the Academy Award.
No,
winner.
best grossing, because that's what really counts, not a bunch of snooty people patting each other on the back about how great they are.
Well, I like the other one, Rocky, in 1977.
Ooh.
But Star Wars
Star Wars highest grossing.
Episode 4 was.
Episode 4. Okay, A New Hope. So what
You
most
knew
of us
that?
Yeah, here's why. Because what
Hey,
most of us know,
Kudos.
what
I
most
love
of
the
us
whole
know,
Star Wars franchise.
You could
so
have
that was good.
you could
That
have
was
said
really good.
anything, and I'd have been like, "How'd you know that?" I don't know if he's right.
what most of us
That was
what
spot
most
on.
of us consider the first Star Wars, because I was also had to be 1977 because I was 5.
That was the first one. They
Yeah.
started with episode
Yeah,
4.
they started with episode
So
4.
now I
So
want to
take that, brother.
Now I'm questioning your parents because if they saw that movie, that means that, well, hold on. If you saw, were your parents there when you saw the movie?
They had to be. I was 5. Either
Wait,
that or my brothers brought me.
Did
I
they-
don't remember.
Well, okay, yeah, because that's before they wouldn't have had it on VHS at that point. So
Oh
I
no,
guess.
no, not even close. All right, Caleb, what was your number one movie?
I don't want to say it.
Oh, I love it. He's gonna take the shot at somebody else's movie and be like, I don't want to say
No,
it.
mine, yeah.
I don't want to say it.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
No, that would be cool. That would be awesome. Instead, I get the Lion King.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay.
You see there.
So I'll tell you what mine was.
It's a cartoon.
Yeah. It's a stupid
Mine?
cartoon about a lion harlot that sleeps with the pack leader and his son.
Hey, Hakuna Matata, brother.
Mine was E.T. Oh, that's a good one. Now here's the funny part.
Okay.
Phone home.
Yes, the way that I saw this was whatever movie is number one when you were 10, that is your prediction for 2025. Like that is the year you're going to experience in 2025. So I was like, E.T., aliens? Sure, it's on the card. Why not? Mine's easy. Walker? I don't know, gonna run around in robes with a wand and whatever.
am
He
I
probably
gonna-
does that.
Am I
on
going to
regular
find a
basis.
horse head in my bed or something?
I- No, I'm thinking you're gonna
Renee
put
finds cocaine.
No, Renee is gonna put an orange. Renee is gonna put an orange in his mouth and run around through a tomato plant.
Hey, I got it then. Trump's back in office, A New Hope.
Or Space Force. Like Star Wars, Space Force. I mean,
Like we have our first intergalactic battle.
look, I'm telling you,
I don't know what happens with Star Wars, so I don't.
the only thing that really I don't see in the cards for 2025 is your movie, Caleb. Like I don't see, I don't see Hamlet.
Oh, maybe Scar dies.
I don't see Hamlet.
Who's Scar? Yeah, Hamlet. Yeah, okay.
Because that's
It
essentially
is Hamlet.
what the
It is
Lion
Hamlet.
King
Yeah,
was,
it is
right?
Hamlet, yeah.
The uncle kills the father,
Yeah.
exiles the son comes back to claim the throne. It's Hamlet. That's all it is. It is the freaking story of Hamlet, which, by the way, was also the movie Strange Brew, which is the greatest adaptation of Hamlet in the history of adaptations. Coo, 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 coo. Bob and Doug McKenzie are fantastic.
So
Take
Disney's
off,
not
Hoser.
original anyway. That's fine. I get it.
No, it's not. Right? I'll have 2 bowls of split pea soup to go, eh? For those who've seen that movie, and yeah, I think Grant is about to spit whiskey out of his nose after that one.
100 times. I saw that movie. Rick Moranis was in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really fun.
That's when he was in his heyday,
Oh yeah.
which was like 1 year.
Their dog's name was Hoser,
Right.
which was fantastic. It was
That's all they did was drink beer the whole
No,
movie.
that would have been. That was like what? That movie came out what 1982
I don't even know.
to 86, probably.
I don't know what year that movie came out.
So Rick Moranis' heyday would be that. What was the one with the alien robot things that he had? He had Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
Yeah.
He had
Spaceballs.
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 Oh, his best movie. Seymour. Little Shop of Horrors.
Yeah.
Ghostbusters.
He was in
He was in
Ghostbusters.
Ghostbusters.
And then there was one where there were these little aliens that they made out of like Coke cans and stuff that floated around and went through things. Am I the only one that saw that one?
Yeah.
Caleb,
no.
that was just a bad LSD trip for
Yeah.
you, and that's
Oh man, I'm
I
like,
think so.
you put
I'm
Rick
gonna-
Moranis in that movie.
no.
and
There's a
it's-
movie about it, and I can't think of it.
and he's going to look it up to try and prove us
I am.
wrong because we know that Caleb was anyway.
Was he in that one? Because it's like I remember that somebody was making those little robots and they saved like an apartment building or something like that.
No, he wasn't in it. I think you're right.
Are you thinking of Short Circuit? Johnny Five is
Nope,
alive.
nope.
Because he was
That
not
a-
in that movie.
That was an awesome movie too, though. Man, he was in this movie. Maybe I'm just crazy.
Are you thinking of Dana Carvey?
No,
I don't know. I mean, what I know is that Second
Man,
City crew, SCTV crew, was John Candy, Rick Moranis, Eugene Levy. I mean, you had all those people in that group. Even, matter of fact, even the guy from Happy Gilmore, right? Hit it again, jackass. That guy was from Second City TV, and I can't remember his name. He never got famous enough for anybody. to
Batteries
care.
not included.
There you go.
Batteries not included.
wasn't
Was he not in that movie?
I don't think so.
Man, oh my brain.
So
like,
wait, whoa,
that's
whoa, whoa.
what do they call that? So there's something Mandela effect.
You thinking that's a Mandela effect where
Yeah.
you swore he was in that movie?
I would have bet you money right now.
I've always heard brain fart.
He had to
Yeah,
be in
that,
there.
I'm thinking that
he
is
had to be in that.
that is
movie.
that is breaking wind between the ears, Caleb. That's what that is. That's all that is. That is not even Mandela effect. I'm just saying.
1987.
Okay, so while Caleb does this research, Renee, what do you think of The Forbidden?
I like that one much better. It's going.
Don't compare it. Just
Okay,
tell us what you
good.
like about it.
It's not real hot.
No.
It's very smooth to me. Just the flavors agree with me a lot better.
There you go.
And it would go better with my Amazon Basin cigar.
Amazon Basin cigar. I love it. So what you're basically saying is, Renee, your cigar of the month is Swamp Ass?
And no, that would be.
I'm kidding.
That would be an Atchafalaya Basin cigar.
Okay, that's right. That would
You
be
know,
the Atchafalaya Basin
You're
cigar.
right,
Yeah.
which they don't make.
Yeah, no.
But you know what? When we go to Mr. Lester's again, I hope Chef Willie still has some of this because I'm going to bring an Amazon Basin to smoke with that one.
There you go. All right. Grant, what about you? What do you think of the Forbidden offering that you can get at Mr. Or did you just have more of the Remus?
Yeah, I had more Remus. I'm going slow tonight. Second pour of Remus here.
Yeah. Great stuff. Caleb, I know you like the Forbidden series
Yeah, I
as well.
swapped back to the Forbidden. I did, and now I'm like, man, I wouldn't mind a Atchafalaya Basin with that. Yeah.
All right. So I do want to go back and bring a little of last hour's content into
Okay.
the second hour as we basically spent almost
So you're gonna carry an ember into the second hour.
that's a great analogy. That's really well done. Look at you getting the segue.
I try.
Dude, so you're like 1 for 147,000. Love it.
Probably.
Yeah, no, we're good. Here's what we didn't get to talk about that, man, it's one of those things that people are going to be like, oh, it's conspiracy theory-ish. I don't think there's any conspiracy about the fact that there are tunnels under celebrities' homes. And you've got celebrities coming out and saying, hey, part of the issue with these fires is because of what's evidently in those tunnels, and they're trying to burn what's in those tunnels out. Just the fact that you have tunnels in so many places around the United States. Think of it this way. City of New Orleans. So people listening on WGSO in New Orleans. You probably know, and the rest of the world knows, that the reason we have graveyards above ground in New Orleans is because if you dig down 6 feet, you're going to find water in a lot of places. So they built their cemeteries above ground. Well, at the corner of Poydras and Canal, there are tunnels there. There are full-on, almost interstate-sized tunnels. You can drive a vehicle underneath those tunnels. Grant, you were telling me there are tunnels underneath LSU in Baton Rouge, correct?
That's correct. It's funny you say that. I was right at Poydras and Canal last night at the Superdome. So right under the overpass. Is that what you're saying? Right. I mean, the bridge,
Okay.
the interstate runs.
No, so I'm sorry, that is Poydras and the interstate. Canal runs parallel almost to Poydras and hits right at Harrah's Casino.
Oh, that small little intersection where it brings
Yep.
it close. Right there.
Yep, right there.
There's a new building there, too. Well, I say they rebuilt the building.
I know there's tunnels from Sanger running under Canal Street, but they did that for the actors and stuff for storage, and they had dressing rooms and everything all underneath Canal Street.
Wait. How long has that casino been there? Well, now it's not Harrah's. Now it's Caesars.
Oh, whatever it is. It's now.
But it's been
Caesars.
Harrah's for as long as I was alive.
Well,
really.
that's because same company owns
Yeah.
both.
Yeah. Do you think maybe it was to transfer money or high rollers?
No. This was their
Or-
This was their way before the casinos were there. So for those who are old enough in New Orleans, and Grant, I know you are because you and I are about the same age. You remember PM Magazine? Eric Paulson, unfortunately, just passed away. Really nice guy. I hated to see that. He actually did a story on PM Magazine, and I'm talking in the 80s, on the tunnels and basically the streets that were running underneath Canal and Poydras.
I mean, right there, there's always been money, and the port's not far from it.
Well, you know what you've got there? You've got what used to be, what was that big building right there across the street from where the casino is now, Grant?
Is that
What did that building used to be?
What? Not One Shell Square.
Nope.
No, wasn't that the convention center?
It was the World Trade Center. in New Orleans.
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
It was the World Trade Center. And Grant, as you and I both know, what organization in the United States likes to mask itself as an international trade organization?
La Cosa Nostra.
What's another one?
Oh, the Mafia.
No, La Cosa Nostra and the Mafia, the same thing.
Well, yeah, but
That's the same.
yeah, I
That's
don't- I
two
don't know where
different
you're going
names.
with this.
I'm talking about a governmental entity.
wait? So y'all still talking about the same thing?
What's that? Well, you could make the argument that certain three-letter agencies operate.
It sounds a lot like Chia, doesn't it?
CIA?
Yep.
Yeah.
well, that was all within a one-block area. You had the CIA right across from the FBI,
Well, that's
right across from the courthouse.
what everybody knew was
Right.
there.
And that's where Guy Bannister and
That
and
that
Jay-
and we're
yeah.
we're gonna get into
Oh,
the
I love
whole
that rabbit hole.
JFK thing that dropped earlier this week. Walker's telling me that we got to do it after this. More Implicit Bias Radio coming your way. Hour 2 continues to roll on here on Implicit Bias. I'm your host, Kevon Bordelon. Joined this week in the Mr. Lester's TSPL. That's the top secret podcast lair for the uninitiated. At the bar, we've got Rene Girard, Louisiana's only certified master tobacconist. He is known as K&B, Kennebra, because that's where he's from. Also, it's a convenience store from when we grew up. He is Grant Galatas of William S. Nacol Jewelers. He's got Deep Blue right there, which we're going to put some of this Remus pick into. If you missed our review of this Remus pick, catch it anywhere you find podcast. Catch it on Instagram, catch it on X, catch it on YouTube. You can find the whole show there. Trust me, you don't want to miss it. But yes, that needs to go into the Implicit Bias infinity bottle here on the show. And of course, sitting in the chair like mine, he is Caleb Morse, the rustic renegade. All right, so I had to bring and I'm going to give credit where credit is due. Caleb had the beautiful segue of carrying the ember from hour 1 to set it on fire here in hour 2 to actually link our next story. So the day that we recorded this show, actually a couple days leading up to this show, there were an awful lot of people who were grilling Trump appointees in Congress. One of them was Elizabeth Warren. Now, Elizabeth Warren claims she's an Indian, right? And like not from India, American, like
You can
woo-woo-woo
say-
Indian.
You can
Yeah.
say it like feather,
Yes,
not dot.
feather,
Like-
not dot. Yeah, there you go.
Well, Trump used to call her Pocahontas.
He
so-
did. So yeah, he called her Pocahontas. She is basically trying to ream people for anything that they might have possibly done ever before that's wrong. She is trying to take down the attorney general nominee. I mean, she's
Well, look,
just proving
she-
how dumb she is.
She wants the perfect candidate, right? And no one can have a human life. They all have to be little robots that do exactly what they're told, unlike anyone that exists, to include her.
Unless you're on her side.
Well,
If
then-
you're on
then-
her side, she can let a lot of
then
things go.
she lets it slide. We don't talk about that. We put it in the pocket.
Grant?
Hegseth had a good bit of fun with her, though.
Yes, he did.
He landed a couple of nice shots. It was fun to watch.
Hegseth
'Cause
had
she
a
was too anxious to get stuff in, and he just really.
Well, here's the
kinda laid
really
her out.
here's the really fun part. We just came from talking about the fires in LA. And one of the things that I really love about X is that community notes
Dude, they're brutal.
have proven that the old school fact checkers were basically lying through their teeth. And this is one of my favorites that happened to Elizabeth Warren. She actually posted on X, and please don't believe me, you can go find this, to help support the communities around LA being devastated by wildfires. You can split a donation between the Los Angeles Fire Department Foundation and United Way of Greater Los Angeles. That sounds like a great idea. It really does. 100% of your donations will go directly to these organizations. And then she has a link. Community Notes got a hold of this link. And I'm just going to read what readers have added to this one. This is not a link to charity. This is a link to a Democratic fundraising platform. They take 3.95% of all transactions.
That's not 100%. When you subtract it, that's not 100.
So wait, 50 plus 50 plus 3.95. That's not 100? Thought that was 100.
It's 103.
0.95.
Well, what you have to look at too is look, a lot of these people, these positions, they have someone who posts to their multimedia,
They
right?
do.
We know someone who does this, and look, Clay, love you to death. He also posts to his own social media, and I've texted him before and been like, "Hey, was this someone else or you?" And he's like, "Oh no, that was me." This, I don't think it was someone else. I think this was her, and she was like, "You know what? They won't notice."
I don't know.
Here's-
I don't think she's that smart.
Yeah, it's not that she's that smart. She thinks we're that dumb.
Yeah,
Because
I
look,
think-
we want to help. I want to help people.
Right.
You want to help. You want to help. Walker doesn't give a damn. But everyone else here, like, we want to help.
Because
somebody.
Walker's a schmuck.
Yeah.
I love that no one can see him, and he could defend himself because he's got a mic, but he's not that quick. Anyway,
Yeah.
He turned his own mic off. He was
He
like, "I'm
did.
not saying it." But like, I think they think we're that ignorant that we will rush to it and be like, you know what? Let's help. Let's do it. And one that a lot of people did.
here's why I don't necessarily believe that someone else did this. Because Elizabeth Warren has never lied to get financial or social or status gain in the past. That's what. Oh, wait, I forgot. She's actually not American Indian, and there's like not a trace of it. And she lied multiple times to get special treatment.
That's just
Don't-
because her Meemaw said she was Indian.
Don't put limits on her, okay? You can
Yeah.
identify as a toaster if you want to. So why not Native American?
This
I still think it's people in the Democratic Party that did this link and they said, Elizabeth, go tell them about this. I don't think she's smart enough to figure that out.
They may have said, "Hey, if you post this on your Twitter, we'll give you 50 grand." And she
Yeah.
was like, Psh, "Okay."
Yeah, well, that I would believe. I
ring
would
the bell.
believe that.
Ring the bell, because I think it is highly probable
Yes.
that that's what happened.
Yeah.
I don't know that it's certainly not impossible, because we now know. I mean, it's not like Democrats paid for Beyonce to show up. It's not like Democrats paid for Megan Thee Stallion to show up at a political thing, right?
Or Oprah.
Or it's not like they paid Oprah. Oh, wait,
It works.
they did.
It
Well,
works.
Yeah, and that's why that campaign was $20 million in debt after they
Yep.
raised $1 billion.
Again, please don't believe us on this. Go look this up, because this is
you know,
out
it's-
there and it's a thing.
It's crazy the difference, right? Because like I went to a fundraiser, and it was Brantley Gilbert and Jelly Roll in Florida after a hurricane, and I had the really awesome, amazing, unique opportunity of hanging out with Brantley Gilbert behind stage and talking to him about all that. And like he and Jelly Roll went there to help. And that's the purpose of going there. And they were like, we're going to do this. We're going to raise money. And all this goes back. They paid for the venue. Then like done. They gave the money back. But yet we have political parties that are like, you know what? Let's not miss out on a natural disaster.
And let's be clear. There is another possibility.
Well,
There
they
is
say
another
that
possibility.
don't let a disaster go to waste.
There is another possibility, and it's this. It's that there is a grifter who misrepresented themselves and said, hey, we do this, and they were taken at their word for it, because that happens. We know it happens on both sides of the aisle. We're not saying that this is just Democrats who do this. Trust me, it's Democrats, it's Republicans. They all do it. It's the only way that someone who's worth $50,000 a year or worth $150,000 or $250,000 can take a job making $174,000, and 5 years later they're worth $40 million. It's the only, well, there's maybe one other way. You could be, and this is a great story which we didn't send out, because this might be the most groundbreaking financial story in the history of financial news. Do y'all know who the greatest single individual stock trader in the history of the market is?
Hillary Clinton.
Nope.
No.
Is it still Nancy?
Nope. Oh, it is Nancy. Yes.
Yeah.
It is Nancy. Nancy in the last 2 years has outperformed, and please don't believe us on this. Please go look this up. Nancy has outperformed every major hedge fund with how much she has made in the market.
Well, she's worth what, like 127 million now?
Oh no, it's like over 140, I think.
Yeah, so it's not overall grossing. It's just most effective within a short time.
Most
period.
efficient.
Yeah,
It is
because
most-
her
it is
one
growth-
investment,
it is growth.
30-day investment
Yeah.
made her how many millions of dollars? Just
It is growth
got in, got out
percentage.
for-
It is growth percentage of your investments year over year.
She's auditioning for her next job working for Warren Buffett. That's what it is. She can predict that so well. Warren's going to hire
Well, there's
her.
a website dedicated just to
Unusual whales.
Yes.
Yep. Unusual Whales monitors what Congress, by the way, we could talk XRP this week. I don't think we're going to talk XRP because that's a deep rabbit hole that I don't know we've got time for. We might talk it next week as things start to maybe pan out. We'll see where that goes. But seriously, you want to really make money in investments, and please, this is for entertainment purposes only. I'm not a financial advisor. I did beat one up last night. No, I'm kidding. I do know some, and I have nothing to do with
know
this.
what?
But it seems to me that logically, if I wanted to make a ton of money, I would just simply buy everything Nancy Pelosi and Dan Crenshaw buy, and when they sell it, I'd sell it right then too. It seems like at that point, I'd be good.
Well, look, there. I hate to bring her up on the show at any point, just like the women from The View, but Matt Gaetz and AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez,
Yeah.
actually, they're trying to get legislation through to where members of the Congress and the Senate cannot invest in the market just because of their inside knowledge.
Ring the bell.
Yeah,
We
that's
universally support on implicit bias.
absolutely.
If you go to Congress, I would up their pay to $250,000 a year, give them a 50% pay bump, but they can't invest stocks, and we'll cover a good portion of their expenses. And that's our implicit bias. We'll be back, the penultimate segment right after this. Penultimate segment of this week's episode of Implicit Bias. I'm your host, Kevon Bordelon. This is the Mr. Lester's top secret podcast layer, the TSPL. We're not Mr. Lester's here. We'd like to emulate it at least a little bit. I'd love to be the only 5-star restaurant between New Orleans and Houston, but it is what it is. We are having so much fun this week on Implicit Bias. The crew is dug in. They've got plenty of samples of weekly whiskey, which means they're well lubricated, which means that we have got so much fun stuff to talk about. So this is one that is very specific. We've already talked about our cigar of the month. If you want to catch that, Renee telling you about the Amazon Basin cigar, you can go find that on our socials, which would pair really well with our Remus. It would pair well with the Forbidden series, the Bluestone Manor that's available at Mr. Lester's. You can catch all that on our socials, anywhere you find podcasts. But this is a story, because we talked about governmental mismanagement a little bit in hour one when we talked about the California fires. Ultimately, I'm curious, Walker, because you're the youngest one in here. At 6.5 years old, Walker, I'm curious, what is your understanding of if someone wants to challenge a constitutional law and it goes as high as it can go? What's the highest place that a challenge to a U.S. law can go? Do you know what that is, Walker, or what's your thought process on that?
Like through the Supreme Court, through the Senate and things like that?
Okay, the Supreme Court. It
Yeah.
stops at the Supreme Court says this is or is not constitutional, correct?
Yes.
So the Supreme Court...
Hold on, let me check my blood pressure.
Yeah, I know Caleb's going to get riled up on this one. The Supreme Court, not too long ago, completely destroyed the Chevron deference and said, if you are a bureaucrat who is not a senator, you're not a congressman, you didn't make law, you don't get to interpret law the way that you want to. And it was literally over pistol braces on rifles. The Supreme Court said, the ATF, yeah, I know you tried to reclassify all of the rifles with pistol braces as short-barreled rifles and struck it down. So, Caleb, I know you're checking your blood pressure.
Yep.
I want you to tell us what the ATF did.
So to preface that, it started off actually with Department of Energy.
Well, that's how the Chevron deference came into play.
Well, and, before that even was the classification of, after that, the classification of dishwashers. Because the government came in and said, like, well, these dishwashers have to be low E, do this, do that. And they said, whoa. This is what the law says. You can't interpret it differently than what the law says and what lawmakers say. And they challenged that, went to the Supreme Court, and it was upheld. Hey, you can't do this crap. ATF came out and said, we're going to make this worksheet. And if no one else saw the worksheet, which I hope to God you didn't, it was Chinese calculus. And Chinese calculus, for those of y'all who don't know, get the finger ready, Walker, is hard as fuck.
Oh, he caught it.
Yeah.
He caught it.
So
Well done,
I warned
Walker.
you.
Good
you were
catch.
paying attention. And so it didn't make sense. And they said, just because you put a brace on the firearm does not change the way it was intended or intended to be shot and designed. The brace was not meant to change the function of the firearm. And it was shot down. And they said the ATF, you cannot reclassify something that was once legal, is the most popular firearm in the United States and used for sporting and recreation. And the ATF came out with an email recently because a gentleman emailed the ATF about a CZ Scorpion and said, look, if I put a brace on this, and he was curious, if I put a brace on this, do I have to register it? We had a period a while back where we could register our firearms free of the $200 tax stamp, but you still had to register them, issue with that. And it was now classified as an SBR. And the email...
Short barrel rifle, for those who
yes,
don't know.
sir. And the email pretty much says, and I'm paraphrasing, we don't care about that. If you put a brace on it, it is now an NFA item and mandatory should be registered and paid a $200 tax.
In other words, the ATF told the Supreme Court, Walker, get ready. They straight up told them to go off.
They said,
to go themselves.
We don't care about what you say. We don't care about the judicial branch. The ATF is an arm of which branch?
The ATF is what, the executive branch?
Executive branch.
It's executive.
They said, this is our directive. This is what we're being told. We're following orders. Piss off.
Renee, you want to chime in on this before we go down this rabbit hole?
I mean, it gets to the point that, okay, now if you have the Supreme Court says one thing, executive branch says something else, how do you clarify that? How do you...
The judicial branch, which said...
Well, and this won't be heard because the Supreme Court's going to say, we already addressed this.
Yeah.
This is the way this should be.
Way it is.
Yeah, and here's the bigger problem. The bigger problem is, who's going to go tell the ATF? What are they going to do to the ATF if they show up at somebody's house?
There's no checks and balances
for
them.
There's no physical check or balance, correct, for the ATF.
You know, as of today, 4 more days, there'll be a new director in ATF. Well, and maybe that guy might have common sense and go, y'all need to shut the hell up. And we're not doing this.
What would make more sense is if we would say, sorry, ATF, we don't need you because the FBI already does this.
Yeah.
IRS already manages taxes, which the TTB is part of the ATF, which manages your taxes. Don't
Yeah.
get that. The IRS does that. We pay them. We pay them too much for that. There's
Sounds
too many
like
of them.
sounds like Doge needs to get
Oh, my
involved with
God.
the ATF.
Yeah, but
Wouldn't
who's
that be
wait,
awesome?
what? Who's going to manage the explosives?
Well, that would be under the FBI as well. They already handle the background checks and the licensing. The ATF just happens to be the medium that is chosen to do that.
Ring the bell. This is the problem with government redundancy. This is the effective hate crime that is the U.S. government. And what do I mean by that? What I mean is murder's already illegal. If, it was a hate crime murder, now the penalty, it's already illegal. Why do we need another law to make it illegal again? And that's what we have.
It's illegaler.
Because we have the Department of Redundancy department.
Yeah, we do. And that is the problem. All right, Walker, I'm going to ask, how much time do we have left in this segment? Because I'm thinking something here. Be careful. I might hurt myself.
About 3 minutes.
Oh, it's more than enough for you.
Perfect. What we are going to do is we are going to take a break now. We're going to add that 3 minutes to the next segment because the next segment, this is where we're going to get deep down the rabbit hole. We're going to talk JFK assassination when we come back on this week's episode of Implicit Bias Radio. Final segment of this week's episode of Implicit Bias. I'm your host, Kevon Bordelon. Great crew here in the Mr. Lester's top secret podcast lair, the TSPL for the initiated. And man, this last segment, I saved this. I actually added some time to this segment because this is a deep rabbit hole, and this is an absolute bombshell that comes out the week before the inauguration of a president who has said and claimed that he's going to release the files on the JFK assassination. Shadows of Ezra has the recording on their X. You can find it in multiple places. We're going to give them credit for it because that's where we're pulling it from. But an audio recording in which a guy by the name of Clifton Carter, who was a DNC executive director and very close associate of Lyndon Baines Johnson, President of the United States,
Before he was president,
he was vice president
and before
for
that,
JFK. Wasn't he a director for the CIA?
he was a senator.
He was a senator, correct.
Yep. And then he ran against JFK.
Well, he had issues with Nixon, running against Nixon
Yep,
as well.
He ran against Nixon, and then for the
it was Bush Sr. who was director of the CIA
Yeah.
that I'm thinking of.
so whenever he ran for the nomination, he came in second for the DNC nomination to JFK, and that's whenever he was all of a sudden chosen as the what?
Vice president.
Oh.
So he's the vice president for John F. Kennedy. John Fitzgerald Kennedy. And Clifton Carter, not Clarence Carter, Clifton Carter alleges, and it's clear as day, that Lyndon Baines Johnson issued the order to a guy by the name of Mac Wallace to carry out the assassination of John F. Kennedy. Now, I'm going to pause and just get initial reaction. If you listened here in the TSPL, I actually put it out on our X. So if you go to the Implicit Bias Radio X, it's at Implicit Bias Rad, you will find that clip. And I said, oh yeah, we're going to talk about this
Have you ever read any of the books that talk about
multiple times.
LBJ, JFK, the Cajun Mafia, and all that stuff back then?
Oh, there's
It is
all
all
kinds of
so
stuff. And
intertwined.
Grant's wound up for this
Yeah,
one. This is one of his favorite topics.
LBJ actually got caught between JFK and his brother, Robert. They pretty much ran the country and left LBJ out of just everything that they were doing. So he was stuck in such a position. And what you brought up was a good point, because it used to be the person who came in second in the nominations was automatically your vice presidential candidate. So I don't know. I'm going to have to listen to this because I've read it and listened to it from all angles. I don't know if LBJ
Okay,
could
so
have pulled this off.
this is
I
a really
really don't.
this is a really interesting rabbit hole. So there is a claim that Richard Nixon said, and I'm going to hopefully get the quote as right as possible. LBJ and I both wanted to be president. I wasn't willing to kill to get it.
Ooh.
Now, that is quoted in a couple of books. One of those books was, I believe the title of it was The Men Who Killed Kennedy. And take a guess who wrote the book. He was a former presidential advisor. He's been in these circles forever. And the name is going to be really poignant when I pull it out. Roger Stone.
Is that the same Roger Stone that was involved with the Trump and went to jail?
And they went after and Trump pardoned him?
Uh-huh.
Grant, you're connecting dots. Grant, what? Yeah, Grant, come on. What are the dots you're connecting here? What are the dots you're connecting?
No, that's new. That's a new name to me.
Because I'm going to say it. 'Cause here's the crazy thing for me. So you've got Roger Stone, who's politically connected for decades. You've got Trump, who sees the files and initially says, I'm going to release, and then says, I can't. People are still alive, and it's a problem. It's going to implicate people who are here today, and that's an issue, which I'm like, well, no, actually, that's not an issue because they need to be implicated if they were. Fine. And I don't know that that's exactly what it was. Maybe he felt it was going to affect some of the victims, something like that. Here's the big thing, though. When they went after Roger Stone, they basically set him up. They basically set up Roger Stone as they were trying to get to Trump. Now, it just makes me wonder. I'm not saying this is the case, but it really makes me wonder. Why would you really go after Roger Stone if you're trying to get to Trump? But if Stone wrote a book and he basically
spells
knows
it out.
who was involved in the assassination of Kennedy, what else are you going to do? You're going to use the government that basically took over to go after him. That, to me, is the most logical road down that path. I'm not saying that's what happened, but I have to wonder, because if you knew and you weren't a part of it and you didn't sign off on it.
Well, victory is written by the victor, right? So at this point in time,
You say history is written by the victor, or victory is written by the victor?
history is written by
Yeah.
the victor. Sorry. So at this point in time, like, they want retribution, maybe before retribution is due. So I mean, it starts to really bring things in the light.
And there are, and we'll throw this up on the page as well, there are interviews with people who knew LBJ. And there's a woman who said that this woman came out and said, and she said it multiple times, she's never wavered. She said, because she was apparently romantically involved with him in some way, shape, or form, she said the night before the assassination in Dallas, Nixon was there, Bush Sr. was there, oil men were there, LBJ was there. They went into a room. LBJ comes out and he says, those Kennedys are never going to embarrass me again after tomorrow, or something to that nature.
And I mean, it's well established that LBJ was a tyrant. I mean, he was power hungry, and he would do whatever he needed to do to get that power.
But here's the crazy part. People who are that prone to error off of a want
Yeah.
usually aren't the ones really calling the shots,
No.
which makes me wonder if there was someone else behind him who was maybe pulling some puppet strings with him as well.
Oh, you mean like the same situation we've had for the last 4 years here?
Maybe. I mean, it makes me wonder if there are maybe foreign entities involved.
Yeah.
It makes me wonder
We
if
know there's
there were
foreign entities
countries
involved. There was Ukraine paid billions of dollars, and so
Well,
did
that
the
was here.
Chinese.
That
Yeah,
was
no,
here.
right
That
here.
was the last 4 years.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
talking back then.
Yeah, that's
Oh, yeah.
us drawing foreign entities in, and then when you look at it, you can go into the meaning of foreign. Like, is it foreign countries being involved? Is it foreign governments being involved? Is it foreign? I'm bringing aliens back into it. Like interdimensional beings. There's a number of different things, right? When
Right.
you look at what exists, how it exists, and where knowledge comes from, there's always a hand at play that we don't see.
Now, here's the really interesting part, because we've had this conversation on the show, and I've said I think that Lee Harvey Oswald was in the book depository? I think he was there. I
Yeah.
absolutely think he was there. Do I think he was either watching or maybe set up and was told, hey, something bad's going to happen. We're going to put you here to watch over? There are reports that surfaced of someone. So he was supposedly in the 4th floor.
Yep.
There are reports of someone who was allegedly in the 6th floor,
When you
which would
sit
make,
down,
I mean, you really want to set him up. That's all you got to do is say, well,
Well,
we're going to
and-
put him in the 4th. We're going to put someone in the 6th. We're going to shoot him from the 6th, and that's going to
Well,
be
the
that.
other
And I'll
shots
be-
fired. He shot at law enforcement while he was running away because he was screaming things along the lines of like, I was framed.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't doubt that he took a shot. From what I read, he couldn't have hit squat.
No, I mean,
But,
the Marine
you
Corps
know-
trains you, but like,
Not with that type of rifle
no,
and
not with
everything else.
not with a what's an Italian rifle, a Caricano.
Caricano, yeah.
But they actually did a GSR test on him at the police station, and it came
Yep.
out negative.
Now, that's interesting because we know he fired a gun at a police officer before he went to
Right.
the police station.
I think that's the beauty, if you can use that word, in this situation of the Kennedy assassination. There was so many people from so many different angles who wanted him gone that some people with half amount of intelligence were able to concoct something to where everyone was to blame, yet no one was to blame.
This is what brings me back to that whole
it's an
baptism of
enigma.
fire, right? Fire purifies. And when you think about all the different angles that could be worked around that story, you've got almost the same number of angles around the JFK assassination. And all I know is this. The one thing that I would put money on with the JFK assassination is that I want every single file released when Trump gets in office. I hope, I pray that he takes a big, huge flashlight, puts it out on the internet, and lets the citizen journalists who are actually doing real journalism dig in. And we start to see captions from them about how they work, about what they've done. I mean, look, even down to, because we're not getting that from journalists today. You can't tell me we're not. Caleb, Grant, I'm reading that book, Chaos, about the Manson murders.
Right.
That book actually documents that the CIA in the 60s had hundreds, if not thousands of reporters on their payroll to tell the story they wanted them to tell. If you think that's not happening today, or that maybe isn't happening anymore, or wasn't in the last couple of years, it's absolutely happening.
It'll
On
always
a
be
much
there.
larger scale.
I don't think you'll ever have all the files
I
because
want them all.
I don't think we'll have all of them because there are certain things that will be redacted. You might get them released, but they'll be 99% redacted or 90% redacted. There's so much connected to other things that you're not going to get all the truth. Now, intelligent people will be able to put them together.
It was
Wait,
60. It was 60 plus years ago that this happened. Take out the names. Give us everything else.
Look, you know why even Trump's hesitant now? Because it makes the country look bad. All of the books that I've read about all of this stuff, and under the name of national security or under the name of it just makes us look bad.
Well, yeah, but we look bad
They've
right
been-
now
yeah,
with our
but
current commander in
it-
chief.
It doesn't matter because there will never be a definitive answer to it because in the long run, it makes the country look bad that they had a person in office who was an elected president of the United States, the most powerful man in the free world. They didn't agree with the direction he was going. They wanted the Vietnam War. There were so many things they wanted that he was counter to that they said, let's eliminate this person. And you'll never find out the truth because it makes everyone look bad for actually executing it to perfection.
You know what doesn't look bad? This episode of Implicit Bias, which unfortunately we're getting the finger, and that means we've got to wrap it up. If you've missed any part of this show, if you want to catch our multiple weekly whiskeys on the show, our reviews of those, if you want to catch our cigar of the month, go find us wherever you get podcasts. Find us on X, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, or just wait 7 more days and stick around for your Implicit Bias Radio. We'll see you in 7.